Everyone, it's Emily Fox. Today's video is going to be a group review of all the nonfiction books that I've read in the last year, basically since I've done that video. Last year in December, I finished 2 more and then I've read 12 this year. So I'm going to review 14 nonfiction, which is less than last year. Last year I had read 30, which is absolutely insane. I had decided to really focus on that topic. I share also in that video some tips and tricks to read more. So I will link that down below, but we're going to go through them kind of in order of like more fun ones, and then we're going to go towards the depressing ones. I think that played a big role for me in terms of the amount of books I was able to go through, because I read a lot of like really serious, kind of dark and depressing ones. So I feel like it put me a little bit in a reading slump. So we're going to start with the fun ones. The first one I wanted to talk about is called Butts, a Backstory. So as you can guess from the title, it's a very serious topic and it's all about butts, which the author goes into it, like different chapters is like different aspect of it. Some of them are more serious and then a lot of them are more fun and light. I listened to that one as an audiobook, which I feel like it works for the tone of the book. It was intriguing. I've been really enjoying reading like introduction on like different topics and seeing how it is, and if I really enjoy them I can go in more details. Obviously not that I necessarily want to know more, but it's just like the idea of like really fixating on one topic and like looking at it from a bunch of different angles. That was interesting, especially if you want to try something a bit less serious in terms of nonfiction. So would check it out if that's your thing. I feel like people have been very focused on them on and off throughout history, so it's an interesting one. Personally, my favorite word to talk about it is foufoune, which my first language is French, so that's usually more used for like children really. But I think it's cute. I think it's fun. Let me know your favorite way to talk about that topic in the comment section. Hopefully we don't get flagged. I don't always rate my nonfiction, but this is probably like a 3.5 star. So the next one that is also very serious is called Bad Gays, which as you can guess from the title is about gays in history that were bad people. And I feel like this could go either way, but the authors, I believe they host a podcast named the same thing, so they're both gay men, so it's fine. It's not a homophobic book, but it was interesting. I'm not a history fan like at all. Sometimes like if it's very like a specific topic maybe, but generally it's not really my thing. So I knew for sure this wasn't going to be an all-time favorite, but I do think that once again it's a very unique and interesting way to look at something that has already been done. So just looking at awful people that turned out to be also gay. I do think that it lacked diversity. It's definitely like male-centric. I think like out of 14 people there's only 1 that is a woman, so like definitely keep that in mind. I don't know if that was on purpose by the authors, if they meant like gay as just gay men, but since there's 1 woman, I'm assuming it wasn't. So I could have been a little bit more diverse. I feel like it would have made things a bit more interesting, but yes. Also listen to that one as an audiobook, which I think helped me. I don't think I would have finished it otherwise, because again, it's not necessarily my cup of tea, but interesting, something different to check out. So if that intrigues you, definitely check it out. I would say rating wise, it's probably also a 3.5 star. For me, by the way, anything that is over a 3 is a good thing. Okay, next we have one physical book. This is The Gene, which giant brick of a book. I was super intimidated, but last year I read The Emperor of All Maladies by the same author, which is a biography of cancer. Highly recommend that one. That one was fantastic. And this one is still good, but not as interesting to me. I did flip-flop with the audiobook, which again, I do think helped me finish it because it is a brick, but I'm really glad I finally got to it because I have been meaning to read that one forever. So as the title suggests, it's an intimate history of the genes, and I did learn a few things that I didn't know. I feel like I already knew about is it Rosalind Franklin, the woman who discovered the shape of DNA, the strands of DNA, and I knew just a little bit. I feel like it's not necessarily unique in history for a woman to have her discoveries been taken and, you know, men pretending that they're the ones that found it. Even when you Google it, you have to actually look. It doesn't say she's the one that did it. Anyway, but yeah, I was really sad to learn more about her life because that's really depressing. She ended up dying at 37, not long after, of ovarian cancer, which like, way to get effed over multiple times. Me just focusing on that random little bit kind of shows you that it wasn't a favorite either, but I'm just really satisfied that I finally got around to reading it. I did learn a few things. I'm sorry the lighting is freaking out for the book, but yeah. It wasn't a favorite, but I overall did enjoy it and just the satisfaction of actually finishing it. So not bad, not my all-time favorite, but in my opinion, you don't need to give a book 5 stars to actually get something out of it. So I do enjoy getting through these kind of science-y nonfiction once in a while. I can finally say I finished it. So the next one is one that I really, really enjoyed, finally. Also lighter, even though the topic is not that light. It's called Patient Zero, A Curious History of the World's Worst Diseases. Okay, obviously the topic does not sound like it's going to be light. And for some reason, a lot of books have been coming out with the pandemic, right? I feel like a lot of big books written about plagues and everything. So it does encompass all of them, the topic in general. And I feel like the tone made it very accessible. I think it's the same author from authors. Oh yes, of Quackery, which I do have on my shelf. I'll get to that one hopefully next year. But it's just a lighter tone on a very serious topic. And that seems to work a lot better for me. I was absolutely horrified when I listened to that audiobook. Actually, I wish I had a physical book because some of the stories I really wish I had like post-its so I could like reread them and be horrified all over again. Like for example, there's one section that they're talking about, what river is it? Is it the Thames? So like in England? And apparently it was so bad hygiene-wise that there would be literal explosion because of the content. So fun. So if you don't have a weak stomach, I would highly recommend this one. I feel like the tone was similar to the book about poisons that I read last year. So if you enjoy that one and you're looking for more fun books about horrifying stuff, this is probably one of the best books that I've read, but best nonfiction that I've read this year. So yeah, that worked absolutely for me. Am I going to read more about diseases? Probably not in that much detail, but I feel like these kind of books are definitely where it's at for me. This is like a way for me to explore these topics without being bored, you know? So enjoy that one. Ooh, next one. I also have a physical copy of it, and it is that title. I cannot say it because YouTube is a poo-poo head. So the full title is A Feminist Guide to Taking Back the English Language. Okay, I was really curious to read this because I did read the other book of the author about cults and enjoyed it. Also kind of a lighter tone in terms of nonfiction. Those are not the only nonfictions that I read, it's just I put them in order. So this one was something that I wanted to compare to the French because like I said, I speak French, I went to school in French, and that's definitely a topic we explored a lot in the French language. If you go into like, I have a minor in French literature, so I feel like I went through that topic quite a bit, and the French language in general is extremely gendered. So that's a topic that I was really intrigued to look at through the English perspective, and it's pretty similar, to be honest. Some of the topics were really intriguing. I hadn't heard anyone talk about it like that. Like she was talking about how sex is really gendered, also just the way we talk about it, and how just using the word penetration, I'm really hoping YouTube is not going to freak out. Just using that word just shows how male-centric it is, because why are we calling it that instead of like envelopment? That's the example that she uses, and it's like, I never thought about it that way. That is really, really intriguing. She also, I just said or like a bunch, I'm sure. That's also a topic that she talks about, and how the way women talk is often seen as a negative. Why? Read the book to get more details. And yeah, overall really enjoying myself. That's something that I like to reading a little bit every day. So if you're trying to do that with serious topics, but again, somewhat of a lighter tone, I would highly recommend this one. It's very readable, a little bit more like, do you call them like pop culture kind of books? So I feel like it's super accessible if you are more of a beginner in terms of nonfiction. So would recommend. Okay, the next one is kind of in between serious and not serious. The title is definitely not serious. This is Why Women Have Better Sex Under Socialism. Definitely eye-catching, and when you read about it, sounds about right. So the author is a professor of Russian and Eastern European studies, and she researched for years what happened to women in countries that transitioned from state socialism to capitalism, and how she sees it as unregulated capitalism disproportionately harms women. And that was a really interesting topic to explore. Super short audiobook. Once again, I think it was like 5 or 6 hours. So it's definitely an introduction to the topic, but I feel like that makes it more accessible to everyone. And I enjoyed myself. I feel like I definitely learned a few things. The author definitely spent her whole life exploring that topic, so she knows what she's talking about. And yeah, it's definitely kind of frustrating, but the research is being done. It's interesting to talk about, so would highly recommend that one also. Now we're going towards more negative, serious topics. The first one is toxic positivity. So that was one of the first, if not the first, nonfiction that I read this year, and it's a topic that I'm really glad we're talking about more and more, because there's nothing more annoying than that person that will always tell you like, it could be worse, and like, If you're going through it, you're allowed to. You're allowed to. The author is a therapist, and she does use this example from her clients, which they did prove first. And I really like the way she talks about it, because she'll present a problem, talk about how people reacted with the client and how they would have preferred people to react. So it's definitely very applicable. It was definitely a little short, and I wish it had been a bit more like in depth, but again, very beginner friendly, very accessible, kind of short audiobook. I went through a lot of these as audiobooks, but that's one of the ways that I like to read my nonfiction, listen to them. The next nonfiction I wanted to talk about is probably the number one that I've read. I didn't put them in any order, but this is probably the best one, the one I wish everyone would read. And it is called Women, Race, and Class by Angela Davis. I feel like if you want to explore any of these topics, whether it's racism, feminism, or classism, you need to read this book. Everything is so intrinsically linked. I learned a ton. I feel like I went to school in Canada. I'm from Canada, and I feel like I didn't learn any of that. Anyway, it's definitely more US centric, but still, we learn none of that, like none of it. And I feel like it would have been life-changing if we had. But if you are looking to get more information about the civil rights movement and like just the feminist movement, I just read it. The author will say it so much better than I ever could. And yes, mind blowing. It took me like 3 months to go through it because it is quite heavy. And I do feel like you could benefit from reading a little bits by little bits, but it's absolutely fascinating. I feel like I will definitely reread this and recommend this a ton. If I could force everyone to read one in this video, it would be this one. I like that the moment I said I went through most of these as audiobooks is the time that I grab all the ones that are physical, but absolutely adore this one. Also extremely depressing. We're going into the whole feminist movement here. How male privilege hurts women. Okay, my main complaint would be that it's like US centric, but like it's kind of made obvious from the get-go, so it's not really a real complaint. It's just more examples, and whether we like it or not, all over the world, I think we're very aware of what's going on in the US at all times, especially in Canada at least. So this one was enraging, still illuminating. I feel like I really especially enjoyed, I'm not sure that's the right word, but I'm pretty sure she's the one that created the word empathy, which having a word for that has been, again, life-changing. I feel like most women have probably experienced that when you're retelling a story to a man, even like a man that you trust, a man that is close to you, whether it's family, friend, whatever, and them having more empathy for a strange man, you know, the man that did something to you, and just taking their side over listening to you like they're supposed to care about you. That is just so enraging, and I feel like this book really talked about that in that section. I was just so like, it's really horrifying. There are a few examples that I didn't know, how like some men that are actually elected in the US have said some awful things online, thinking they were anonymous, and then absolutely nothing happens to them afterwards. It's fun. So yes, definitely recommend this one. Also something that I read slowly and that will probably depress you as much as it depressed me, but I think this is a really important topic to explore. So yes, really did enjoy that one, if that's the right word, but be prepared mentally. The next one is a similar topic, also very much enjoyed it, and it is Men Who Hate Women, the extremism nobody's talking about. I don't think nobody's talking about it, but I really enjoyed, once again, the author's take on the topic. Every chapter is a different topic linked to that. So Men Who Hate Women, so the incel movement. Men Who Prey on Women, so the pickup artist one. That's a topic I didn't know that much. I don't know how I missed that whole phase, but I did. So Men Who Avoid Women, Men Who Blame Women. So she goes into this whole exploration throughout basically the pandemic, really. That's when the book was published in, is it 2020? Yes, 2020. And she decided to explore the internet, try to find these people and find information on the topic. And it's extremely depressing once again. The last chapter is Men Who Hate Men Who Hate Women. So it's supposed to be hopeful. I'm gonna be honest, I did not find it hopeful enough for my taste, but she goes into details about how to actually try to change things and how she's doing speeches in school and how men helping out is the only way any change is going to happen. Because unfortunately, if, you know, especially young men that she goes, you know, in high school to talk to, they don't respect women, so why would they listen to them? So you need to like start to change for it to actually happen, and how we need, again, men allies to bring that up. So yes, once again, extremely depressing, but I cannot recommend this enough because I feel like it's a topic that in real life, when I talk to other women, it's so weird how there's this divide. Some of them are really aware if they spend any time on the internet, really, and then the ones that don't, they just live their life in real life and they have no idea what's going on. So again, they tend to believe, oh, it has no effect, but like we're getting more and more terrorist attacks. Like even in Canada, which like, I know that like the US has really normalized the whole thing, but here it's kind of crazy. So the fact that it's happening more and more is crazy. So yes, would highly recommend that one. Once again, I went through it fairly slowly and you probably should too. But these two are definitely super important and can't recommend them enough. I'm sure the comment section will reflect this topic now that they're in here, because every time I post a video about nonfiction, if I talk about anything that is remotely feminist, the comment section is a mess, and it just proves the whole point, which the author once again mentions at the end, that she's glad she published a book during the pandemic because, again, the threats and everything that she received are absolutely insane. So yeah. Just, you know, again, proving her point. We have What My Bones Know. This is the only memoir I've read this year. I read a couple last year, a little bit to my surprise. It's not usually my thing. I feel like I joke around that, oh, I don't care that much. But seriously, I feel like some of them can definitely bring a lot of information, can really affect you. And this one, also very depressing. At this point, we know. You follow the author. She's talking about her childhood, which absolutely traumatic. She has CPTSD, so complex PTSD, and she talks about, again, how her whole life went until now, where she is going through, you know, reliving that with a therapist, trying to get better. I don't really feel comfortable rating someone's life, so I feel like I don't really feel comfortable doing that with the book. I do want to say that personally, I enjoyed the first half more, and I didn't care as much about the present, her going through the therapy. So you might feel differently, but a lot of people really did enjoy this book, if that's, again, the right word. I really need to extend my English vocabulary in terms of these kind of topics, but this was interesting. Not necessarily my personal favorite, but it's quite popular if you're into that. We're just gonna move on. The next book is the only really self book that I read this year. This is Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents: How to Heal from Distant, Rejecting, and Self-Involved Parents. Do I need to say more? Okay, I saw a lot of people talk about this, saying how they couldn't like read the whole thing because they kept crying, and I was hoping that it would just do something similar to me. I did overall enjoy how it put into words. You can really see the beginning. I put a million post-its because it really put into words some of my own experiences. The only thing is that I wish she had given more actual practical solutions. I believe some of you told me that there's a second book, which I hate having to read a second book. Like, just put the whole thing in one, especially it's not even big. I do wish you got actual solutions in this one book, because she only seems to hint at the fact that you should pretty much just have the relationship as much as you can, like keep it service level, like gray rock people. It doesn't work for me personally, because I feel like if you're supposed to be one of the closest people to me, I'm gonna call you out. And like, I'm not comfortable just pretending. I can't do it. I can't do it. So yeah, overall enjoyed the first half, didn't really care about the actual self-help portion, I guess. So you might feel very differently if you've read this, actually. Let me know in the comments section how you felt about it, and especially if you've read the next one, if there is the next one, and if it was more helpful, because I feel like I'm glad I read it, because again, having the confirmation that you're not the only one is great, but I don't think I got anything out of it in terms of how I can implement anything in my real life. Okay, the next one I forgot to grab my copy, but I also read Who Cooked the Last Supper, which is like a woman history, basically looking back at history through like the women that were erased. If you have more books on that topic, let me know, because I have a couple on my list that I want to read, but super interesting topic. However, I didn't look into the author. I probably will now that I just finished it. And I feel like I was buddy reading it with a friend, and the first like 2-3 chapters feel very much, to be fair, I do feel like in general, we don't necessarily have always a ton of information, and a lot of the research that was done is very biased, which she does address, makes fun of quite a few like anthropologists that were popular like 50, 70 years ago, whatever. And I get that, I get it, but it doesn't make it sound very serious. It made it sound biased from her side, and like, I'm on her side, but like, it still sounded very biased. With that said, afterwards, I feel like I really got on board and got more interested in the topic. It's extremely depressing, once again, to like no one's surprise. It does stay quite surface level, so I'm kind of on the fence with this one. Again, I just finished it, so it feels a bit too like close to really have a strong opinion, but I would love to hear your thoughts. I really wanted to include it for that reason, really. I wanted to talk about it with you and to figure out if there are more books on the topic, better books, because again, I don't really... Okay, the next book, I'm a little bit on the fence. This is A Room of One's Own by Virginia Woolf. This was the first book that I've read by her, and I didn't realize it was nonfiction until I started. I was doing it for a challenge, my Read It or Unhaul It challenge, so it tends to be quite like you don't have time to really research the book. You just have to decide if you're going to read it or get rid of it because it's been on my shelf for too long. And I'm on the fence because it is 2 essays that she wrote to do a speech, and it is like older feminist work, and I obviously am looking at it through a modern lens. I'm fully aware of my biases. I feel like every time I talk about it, that's what's going to happen in the comment section. I had seen a lot of quotes of that one. That's why I picked it up. And I do agree that it's definitely very quotable, but I couldn't help but feel like a lot of her arguments came from a place of privilege. Obviously, as a woman, she was discriminated, absolutely, but she was also not poor. She says that she was living, and I looked it up, and like modern day, it's like $50,000 Canadian a year, which like obviously that plays a role into her being able to actually write. And when she talks about the fact that women should be able to change the world at this point because they have the right to vote, but like, who does? Just the women like you. So I couldn't help but feel a bit about the whole thing, but I'm still very much interested in trying more of her fiction work and to just explore in general older feminist work. I feel like it's really interesting to see where it was, if things have changed, and the ones that I wouldn't necessarily agree with a modern lens. I feel like it just lacks intersectionality, which to be expected, but still. I feel like when we talk about these topics, people in the comments once again will say that, well, of course, didn't have intersectionality at the time. She didn't. I highly doubt that every woman agreed with her. The same way when we talk about racism. Not everyone was racist back in the day just because it was normalized. Anyway, yeah, I feel a bit about the whole discussion. I feel like speaking English in general, it's my second language. I just don't feel like I have the capacity to really address these topics the way I would like to, but I'm glad I read it. But because it's just 2 essays, it doesn't really go in enough details to really have that discussion. So yeah, this is it. These are the 14 nonfiction books that I've read this year. As you can see, I feel like last year I had a lot more fun. And I am planning on making some changes for next year. I think that in January, I'll do a video where I talk about the books that I'm hoping to read. I will do more research. I like to get most of them from my library because they get the new ones, and if they don't have them, I can easily request them. And generally speaking, I buy most of my books used, and I don't find a ton of nonfiction. So I'm going to sit down like January 1st and go through whatever they have added in the last year and show you what I'm hoping to get to this year. Hopefully 2024 will be a bit more cheerful than 2023, and I will put on the screen the one that I did for last year. Do warn you, the saturation is completely off. I had just moved to this room, probably the same way that right now is going to be pretty dark, but it's like past 5 o'clock. It's dark right now in Canada, so I will see you next video very soon. Bye.